take a walk on the woo-woo side with me. My name is Michelle Douglas and I'm an intuitive healer, coach and soul regression therapist. I help people to create health, wellness and prosperity in their lives through a process of clearing harmful or restrictive energies or beliefs. My ultimate goal is to empower you to create the life that you desire. For more information, visit findmysparkle.com.
Hello. Welcome to the Find My Sparkle podcast. My name is Michelle Douglas and we're going to be talking today about how to talk to spirits. So have you ever wondered what it would be like to be able to communicate with somebody from the other side, or have you had some experience with that and you want to learn more? So today I'm going to sort of talk you through my experience and also offer some tips for anyone who's actually wanting to learn how to do this. So when I was a kid, I remember, I think I was about 6 or 7, I remember hearing a male voice saying hello to me when I was alone in my room, and I had no idea who the voice belonged to or where it came from. I wasn't scared, but I did think my mind was playing tricks on me, so I never really thought much about it. And that was probably the extent of my training. And I never heard anything after that, and that was it. So if you're thinking you can't do this, or you can't be a medium, or you can't talk to spirits because you've read about or you've seen a medium talking about their ability to see and talk to them as a child, and this is where I was at one point, is like some of these people talk about, oh yeah, when I was a child I started seeing ghosts in my room and I would talk to them and I had these imaginary friends, and I didn't have any of that. Apart from the occasional hello, I heard nothing. And you've got to remember too is that up until the age of 7, we're all very, very open, and we will be able to hear and see things that we probably forget over time. So if I did see anything beyond the hello or hear anything beyond the hello, I have no memory of it. But there are some people who are lucky enough or gifted enough to be able to go beyond that, see it and build on it from a very young age. So I'm not that person, but I want you to know that even if you don't have any experience with talking to people on the other side, it doesn't mean you can't do it. So this is how my mediumship knowledge grew. So I was very interested in mediumship, and I would go to psychics, and I would be really interested in reading books and watching YouTubes. As I got older, I was binge watching YouTube videos for quite some time about mediumship and different readings people were doing, and I was quite amazed at how accurate some of these readings were. So it's pretty cool. 2019, I read the book Journey of Souls, which is a book by Dr. Michael Newton. It's an incredible book. I'll put a link in the show notes or on the blog, depending on where you're watching this from or listening to this from. So you can get yourself a copy. It's amazing. And this is where they sort of talk about the time between lives. So when you pass away and transition from the physical to the non-physical, you go to a place, a space, a dimension, whatever you want to call it, for some time before you come back into your new life. And Dr. Newton took a huge number of people through this process, and they all told similar stories. So there's a lot to be said. So after reading that book, I decided I wanted a life between lives session with a local practitioner called Marie. And this session changed my life forever. I became very clear on my purpose. I received confirmation that we definitely don't die when our physical bodies do. And I learned that I am on a mission here in this lifetime to do more of the woo-woo stuff, I guess. And I needed to find some teachers, because for a lot of us, it's not a natural gift. We do need to learn, okay, or be taught. So how did I get into it? Well, after my Life Between Lives session, my husband Laurie had his Life Between Lives session with Marie as well. And she handed him a piece of paper afterwards and asked him to pass it on to me. And it had the name and number of a mediumship teacher, or medium and teacher, called Reese. She'd been nudged to pass his details on to me, which she did. So I reached out to Reese and I booked in to have an actual mediumship session with him, because I wanted to see if he was the real deal. It was an interesting one because I'd not lost anyone in my family, or anyone I knew really, for almost 20 years. So any information from those who'd passed was quite limited. But he did bring in a family member who I'd never met and provided a lot of information which my mother later confirmed as true. The information also came through about my grandfather, who we sadly lost earlier this year. And that came through and I had no idea about it. So my mum was able to confirm that for me. And I'd never met Reese in my life, so there's no way he could have known this information about my dear old pop. So during my session with Reese, it became really clear that I needed to hone my mediumship skills, and I've since translated this to I need to be able to communicate better with the other side. So that can be with the spirits of those who've passed over, it can be with my guides, or it can be with other beings that we cannot perceive with our 5 main senses. So we can't see them necessarily with our eyes, we can't hear them with our ears, we can't smell them with our nose, but we can learn how to sense them with our non-physical senses, so to speak. So anyway, Reese has put a book out, which I am sure if you're interested in mediumship, you'll find really helpful. And it's called How to Talk to the Dead in 10 Easy Steps. So I'll provide a link to that one as well. It's a brilliant book. And it really has some really good information about talking to the other side. Highly recommended. So anyway, had my session with Reese and he invited me to join his circle where we get on a Zoom call. He would talk to us about mediumship and he might teach us something, give us some information. And then during the calls, we each take a turn to see if we can pick up on any messages from the other side. I didn't feel really confident in my abilities at this time. And I think I was a little bit hit and miss, but hey, you've got to start somewhere. But they were fun calls to be involved in and really interesting. Like some of the stuff coming through was really cool. So a couple of months later, I was invited by Reese to attend a workshop he was running on mediumship. He understood I didn't feel overly confident and he knew I was brand new to this sort of world. And he promised to support me during the day and I would be okay. He was confident I'd be fine. So I was excited, apprehensive, but I was looking forward to learning more. So the first part of the day was theory. It's where he sort of talked us through the different aspects of talking to people on the other side. And then we're told we would each need to take a turn to come up to the front and do a reading for somebody in the group. So that freaked me out. Anyway, so the people in the group were amazing. And I later found out some of them are actual practicing mediums. They do this for a living. I was like, oh my God, glad I didn't know that to start with. Anyway, they were really good at tuning into the other side and brought through some incredible messages and stories. It was great. So to say I was shitting myself is an understatement. How could I measure up to these people? Anyway, by the time it was my turn to stand up, I'd been feeling a male energy around me. And what I'd learned from listening to the other mediums throughout the day was that you just got to trust what comes in. So the number 47 kept coming through, followed by the number 27. So I went with that. So I'd picked up that the spirit I had connected with was a male who'd not died suddenly, but he'd not died of cancer. It was something else. It was some type of illness that eventually took his life, though. It had something to do with his chest area, but I wasn't sure if it was the heart or lungs. I picked up a bottle green coloured bike, and I picked up that he was tall with dark hair. And finally, he was showing me the rear end of an animal. So that was a bit weird. And I was a bit confused about that. I could just see this animal's butt. But I didn't know what that meant, but I went with it. And I figured it would make sense to the person the message is meant for. A moment later, one of the attendees burst into tears. And she told me that I connected with her late fiancé who died of heart failure after having a transplant at age 47. She told me that her birth date was the 27th of the month. And that the bike that I talked about was the one he rode to work. And yes, it was green. And she confirmed he was tall with dark hair. And as for the animal butt, that was his dog. So this dog would back into you, so you would pick him up and put him in the car. And finally, he had a message for his fiancée, and it was that she didn't need to worry about what was bothering her at that time. He was perfectly okay with what she was wanting to do. So she was currently struggling with a decision to do some traveling for work, and she was thinking of leaving the dog with her brother, but she was feeling extremely guilty about it. And so this message was to tell her that everything's okay and that she should do what she wanted to do, which is pretty cool. So I was very surprised and happy at the accuracy of the message I'd picked up, and it gave me a huge boost of confidence. Maybe I could do this after all. What was even more awesome was the feeling I felt inside. It was this feeling of joy knowing I'd helped this person to come to a sense of peace over a decision which had been bothering her for some time. So that, I think, for me was the most beautiful part. Anyway, so if you've read this far, or you've listened this far, I should say, you're probably wondering how I was able to tune into the spirit of this man without having any training apart from some theory, and how you can do this too. So here's what I learned. First thing is, it's really important to quieten your mind. If you can get yourself into the alpha state, at the very least, you'll be able to connect more easily. Now, the alpha state is something you can get into while driving, or even just watching TV. It's basically when your brain's not really connected with what you're doing. It's like you're just, automatically going through life, so to speak. So try to keep your head out of the way by allowing messages to come through and passing them on before you have a chance to analyze them. It's when we get into our head that we're really starting to block those messages. So the messages can come through in many ways, such as feelings, visions, words coming into your mind, smells, and so on. So go with whatever you get. I get a mixture, so I can sometimes see images. I sometimes have a feeling. I sometimes get words that just pop into my mind. So everyone's different, and some people will probably be stronger in some things than another. I know a lot of people are a lot better with feeling than they are at seeing, so to speak. Okay, another thing too is when I see these images or words, they flash in very quickly and disappear just as fast. So they're also very subtle as well. So that's why it's important to keep your head clear. So when a spirit or guide is near, you will often feel them around you as well. So I often feel like I have someone, when you've got a person standing a little bit too close, it's kind of like that, but it doesn't feel bad. So I don't feel uncomfortable with it. It actually is a reassuring feeling for me. So if it is feeling bad, it could be that you've got someone around that's probably not for your greatest good, and you just need to ask them to leave, and they will leave if you just be firm with them and say, look, I need you to go. But if you're happy to have them around, then by all means acknowledge that they're there and thank them for coming in to see you. So with mine as well, they often come in on my right side, sort of diagonally behind me, and it feels like a presence, like I said, like someone standing a little too close, but it's a good feeling. And trust what you receive and write down or speak the message immediately. So you might even want to keep a recorder going when you're doing these readings for someone or yourself or whatever. Like if you're talking to a spirit while you're alone, or if you just need to ask a question and then just repeat what you receive back and just write it all down. And what's really important here too is that you don't question what you're being told, and sometimes you'll receive messages which are more symbolic than literal. So for example, I actually did a psychic reading for a lady not that long ago where I could see all these concrete boxes in her way. And I took that to mean that she was experiencing a lot of obstacles, a lot of situations or getting in her way, or obstacles getting in her way at the moment. But I could also see her getting through them or climbing over them. And I could see that even though they were there and they were getting in her way, she was going to overcome them. And that's exactly what happened. So, and she confirmed that I was spot on. Yeah. So sometimes you won't see things as expected, if that makes sense. All right, so what do you do next? So if you want to learn how to talk to spirits or your guides or the angels or anyone on the non-physical side, the best time to start is now. Second best time is after now. So there's a few things you can do to build up your skills, and these aren't an exhaustive list. So there's so much more you can do, but these are just a few that have worked for me. Okay, so the first thing to do is to learn how to quieten your mind. Meditation works well for some people. Just sitting in nature works for others. Or you can even just stare at a candle flame. Just focus on that and empty your mind of all thoughts. This part is really just about practice. Spend at least 10 minutes every day, even just lying quietly without thoughts. It's harder than you think, but it gets easier over time if you're not used to doing it. Next thing you can do is research stories about mediumship. Read books on the subject, such as the book I mentioned previously, the How to Talk to the Dead in 10 Easy Steps by my friend Reese, which teaches you the basics of mediumship. Practice. Ask friends if you can do readings for them and ask them for their feedback. Write down anything you learn from these sessions so you can improve your skills. Doesn't matter if you've never done a mediumship reading before. This is really just about whether you can pick up on those subtle messages. And if that feels a bit scary, doing readings for other people, just ask in your mind or out loud a question about something you don't yet know the answer to. So the question doesn't have to be about anything important, but it must need a yes or no answer. So as soon as you ask the question, go with the very first word, whether that be yes or no, which pops into your head. Now go and find out whether yes or no was the correct answer and write down your findings. Were you right? Were you wrong? And keep doing this until you begin to trust the answers you hear or sense or perceive coming into your mind. When you're learning how to talk to spirits, be kind to yourself. Don't expect yourself to be a perfect medium. I don't think there's such a thing. Even the best mediums aren't 100%. And, some are very much up there. but again, it's all about the symbols and the information coming through and how well it's translated, right? So, but it is really just about practice. So practice, practice, practice. Be kind to yourself, trust what comes in, and you're on your way. Have a good one.